Hello friends, let's welcome to the part 7 of this video series. Here we are going through the AWS Solution Architect practice exam questions. For uh, questions 1 to 40, I would request you to please refer parts 1 to 6 of this video series. I would request you to subscribe to my channel and like my videos if you think this is helping you out. Please put in your comments in case if you have feedback or suggestions. In this video, we will start from question number 41. For questions 1 to 40, please refer to my previous videos, which are in parts 1 to 6. I would request you to pause this video here. This will give you some more time to read the question. So by now you must have read the question. So this question is very simple. It is asking you to provide a solution for customizing the images. That's at a high level. And this solution should be highly available. This is a keyword. So the customized image must be generated on demand. Let's look at the options. So one trick I would like to share with you, whenever you see such questions where the image needs to be modified or a thumbnail needs to be generated from this image, this most likely is a lambda question. The answer would be lambda most likely. Keeping that in mind, options A and D would be striked out. So whenever we have similar kind of questions, EC2 instances will not help you to modify the original images. Now this question is talking about the most cost effective solution. If you see the most cost effective solution, EC2 is not cost effective compared to lambda. Why? Because EC2 is a server, uh, it's a server based architecture, and Lambda is a serverless architecture. What that means is EC2 will be always on for the processing, and Lambda would be initiated, started when the processing is required, and once the processing is completed, it would be stopped. So that way your Lambda function will not be active for the whole day, and you will save the cost due to this. Let's look at option number D. Here it is saying to manipulate the original image, you use EC2 instances and store the image in S3 and the manipulate image in DynamoDB. So whenever we see about image, it is never stored in DynamoDB. So hence this option is wrong due to two reasons. First is EC2 instance is never used to manipulate the image because it is not cost effective. The second one is never use Amazon DynamoDB or any database to store the files or images. Images are actually files. So this leaves us with two options, B and C. If you see C, it is saying that you store the original image in S3 and the manipulated image in DynamoDB. This is again wrong because you never store the images in a database. So that's why C is wrong. And the reason why C is wrong is because it is asking you to configure a load balancer in front of the EC2 instances. Here we are using Lambda and not EC2 instances, and hence it will not suffice. So this leaves us with option B as the answer. The reason for that is B is most cost effective because it is a serverless application. Lambda is serverless, and it will store both the original and manipulated images in S3. S3 is the cost effective object store. Plus what you're doing is you're now plugging CloudFront, which has some caching capabilities, and it uses edge location processing, which is most cost effective. So it is this option is the best because it is the most cost effective. It has various parameters which makes it most cost effective. One is Lambda, the other is S3, and the third is CloudFront. So we will lock this option as our final answer. So in terms of diagram, let me show you what it will look like. The API gateway will send request to Lambda. Lambda will get triggered. The functions will get triggered. It will process the images. It will store the images in S3, and then CloudFront will be used in between S3 bucket and the user so that they get some benefits of caching as well as edge location processing. Now, that way, it is the most cost-effective solution. Please understand this diagram carefully because this is very crucial for the exam. This sort of question comes in the exam. Let's jump to question number 42. I would request you to pause the video here so that it gives you more time to read this question. See, in order to clear the certification exam, it is very important to understand what is the keywords or what are the keywords in this question that should be used to answer, and how the options are linked to these keywords. So the question is very simple. You have an application which is on S3 US East, and the requirement says that you have to replicate this data in another region from a disaster recovery perspective. So in order to do this, this is a answer which we have right now. The reason for this choosing this answer over others are as follows. If you see option B and C. It is talking about CORS. CORS is primarily used, that is cross-origin resource sharing. This is primarily used because if you have a website and if you have different components of the website to be talking to each other, then we use CORS. This is not an example of CORS, but this is an example of cross-region replication. So hence CORS goes away. These two options B and D are wrong. Now let's look at option number A. Create an additional S3 bucket in another region and configure cross-region replication. The only difference between A and C is, I mean, both looks correct, but in the exam, this is right. The reason for that is you cannot set a cross-region replication unless versioning is enabled in that region. So looking at option A, C is more correct because here we are enabling the versioning. You cannot configure cross-region replication without turning on the versioning. That's why option C is correct. So we will lock option C as our final answer. Now let's look at question number 43. Please pause your video here if you want to read this question carefully. The question is simple. You have some storage which is hot and some which is cold on premises, and you want to move this to your AWS cloud infrastructure. And these are all high performance applications. So if you see this question, it says high performance applications. So one trick I would like to share with you. So whenever you see HPC, okay, the answer would be usually related to FSX, okay, because that is used for high performance computing. Now here we have to choose two options, okay, one for hot and the other for cold storage. So hot storage is your high performance. So for high performance, you should use FSX. But which one to use, Lustre or Windows? That is a question. And in order to decode that, if you see here, the question never talks about any operating system or platforms. So in this case, if the question doesn't talk about it, we will assume it's Linux. And if it's Linux, we use FSX for Lustre for hot storage. And the cold storage will be S3. What are the cold storage options we have? We have EFS and S3. EFS is wrong because EFS is a file system. It is not used for storing the objects. Plus EFS is never a cold storage. EFS is, I would say, not high performance computing, but it is near to that. And it is a hot storage itself. So S3 is the right option in this case. Let's look at the diagram. So this is your in premises. You have a hot and cold storage in premises, and when you migrate this, the stuff will go to the FSX Lustre, because since the operating system is not mentioned, we will assume it is Linux. Always assume it is Linux. It is not Windows if nothing is mentioned, and the cold storage will go to S3. Hence, we will lock these two options as our final answers, A and D. Let's move to the next question. Let's say question number 44. Please pause the video here so that you get some more time to read this question. I would request you to also scan the options. So the question is simple. You have an application or website, and it is being accessed through various application load balancers. And the question is asking that the solution should ensure that the correct content is displayed without violating the distribution rights. What it means is, if certain content can only be viewed in USA, then people in India or people in Sweden, Singapore should not be able to access that content. Now here we have two options with WAF. First, try to understand what is WAF. See, WAF is a firewall. In basic terms, it's a firewall, and it helps you avoid compromising security, okay, or avoid scenarios where excessive resources are consumed. Like someone is trying to hack your application by consuming excessive resources so that your infrastructure goes down. This question is not a WAF question. This is a question where distribution rights for your content across the globe is discussed. Hence, we will strike off both these options A and B. Let's look at options C and D. When we look at options C and D, let's look at this description. What are the different routing policies for Route 53? So these are the different set of routing policies. Simple routing policy. So I would request you to pause this video here so that you can read it carefully. So simple routing policy is used if you have a single resource. Now failover routing policy, as the name suggests, it is used when you have to configure an active passive failover. For example, you will have two EC2 instances, one is active and one is passive. If there is a failover happening because of the active instance going down, then the passive instance would become active. That's how the failover routing policy is configured. But this question is not linked to the failover routing policy. These are our two options that is mentioned. Geolocation routing policy. This is used when you want to route the traffic based on the location of your users. So is this what we are looking at? I think so. Yes, because in our question we say that only people in that location should be able to access that content. For example, people in America should be able to access that content, and people in India or Singapore should not be able to access that content. So geolocation routing policy looks correct. But let's scan through other routing policies. Geo proximity routing policy. This is used when the traffic, to route the traffic based on the location of your resources and optionally shift the traffic. So this is proximity. What you mean is, if you have multiple EC2 instances, and if certain EC2 instances are in a close proximity of that user, suppose that user is trying to access it from India and there is a EC2 instance in India, then that person will be routed to that, because it is in close proximity, they will be routed to those EC2 instances. So this is not what our question is looking for. And there are three other stuff. Latency routing policy. So based on the latency, suppose if you have EC2 instances which are in India, America, and London, and you are a user in India, then it will route you to the servers in India, because that will give you the best latency. Uh, so that's how it works. Then we have multi-value answer routing policy. So this is a different thing which is totally based on DNS. And then we have a weighted routing policy. So what happens is the traffic is sent in uh, balanced manner to the multi. Suppose if you have two EC2 instances, then the traffic will be sent. If you have 100 requests, then 50 requests would be sent to EC2 instance 1 and 50 would be sent to EC2 instance 2. That's how it is doing a weighted routing policy. So we will go with option C. This is the final answer. We will lock this answer. So question number 45 goes this way. So you may pause the video here so that you would be able to spend more time reading this question. So this question is talking about, there are two steps. The first step is synchronous and the second step takes longer. So your order should be processed exactly once. This is the keyword, and the order in which they are received. You have to process it in sequence. Okay. So in this case, SQS FIFO queue is the right answer, but let's examine the answers. So what is FIFO queue? What it does is everything comes in like first in and first out. The queues are designed to enhance the messaging between the applications. Okay, so example of these situations where you might use FIFO is this. One good example is where you display the correct product price by sending price modifications in the right order. Okay, or you may use this to prevent a student from enrolling a course before registering for an account. These are good examples for it. And let's understand what is the SNS topic. It's a logical access point. So what it does is it lets you uh, group multiple endpoints and such as lambda and etc. So basically what it does is, the SNS topic can subscribe to FIFO, and then it can either send emails or it can invoke a lambda function. This is what it can do. But our question doesn't ask for this portion. If you see the question, this is our question, and you know it is just saying that it should be processed exactly once and in the right order. It doesn't ask for any email bursting or a lambda function in invocation or any other process after that. So that's in that case, if we use lambda function along with SQSQs, it makes no sense, because you would need an SNS topic, and there is no use of a lambda function here in this case, because the question doesn't talk about it. And option C and D, it says that you need to create an SNS topic and subscribe. So that's the same thing that I've explained in the diagram. You don't need an SNS topic here. If you see here, uh, the question is not talking about this portion like I explained. So we will lock this answer as option A. So could you please subscribe to my channel? You know, it really helps me motivate myself so that I can produce more such videos. And I'm pretty serious in sharing all the knowledge that we have I've cleared this certification long back, and the knowledge that I'm giving in this video will definitely help you clear this exam. So please subscribe to my channel, like my videos. If you have suggestions, then please drop in your comments and I'll try to act on it. Now let's look at question number 46. You may pause your video here because that will help you read this question carefully. So basically, your application is hosted on a EC2 instance, and this application performs well if your EC2 instance utilization is near or at 40%. That's the question. Now, out of these options, what should you do to maintain the desired performance? So basically, what would happen is if your utilization is greater than 40%, then you have to spawn one more EC2 instance. And if your utilization is less than 40%, then you'll have to delete the additional EC2 instance. So you can manage with one EC2 instance. And that's where your application works to the optimum performance. Now, out of these options, let's understand what is a scaling policy first. So there are three options which are using scaling policies and one option which is using Lambda. This is not a business case for Lambda because Lambda is never used for triggering the auto scaling groups. It is used for image processing and creating thumbnails, etc. But this is not a function of Lambda. And Lambda is also used together with SQS and SNS topic so that some actions or some processing can be done by Lambda based on the queues that has been processed. So C is out of question. Now let's understand simple scaling policy and target tracking policy. Now, if you see the simple scaling metrics, so it's based on the scaling metrics. You can ramp up or ramp down the EC2 instances. But if you see here, it says we strongly recommend that you use a target tracking scaling policy to scale the metrics like average CPU utilization. And this is exactly what our question demands. So now I've established why simple scaling policy is wrong and we should use target tracking policy. But let us also look at scheduled scaling actions. So scheduled scaling actions here, if you see, there is no schedule. It doesn't say that at a particular time of the day this needs to happen. So that's why we should not use scheduled scaling actions. The scaling action should be based exactly on the CPU utilization. And for CPU utilization, like we saw in the Amazon website, we should use the target tracking policy. Hence, in this case, our answer here would be option B. So this is a short read on target tracking policies. You may pause this video here and you can have a read for more clarity. Let's jump to question number 47. So this is the question. Please pause this video if you want to read the question carefully. I hope by now you must have read this question. What I'll do is you will see the answer to this question in my next video. I would request you to think about the answer because similar questions we have covered in my previous videos. Think about the answer, and in the part 8 of the video we will look at the answer and the explanations. So that's it. This brings us to the end of part 7 of this video series. I would request you to subscribe to my video and like my channel. Subscribe to my channel and like my videos. If you have any comments, please drop in. Your feedback is really important for me. I would like to sign off with a quote: great things never come from comfort zones. So this is very important to remember in life, that whenever you want to achieve something, you have to cross your comfort zones. I will sign off for now. We'll see you in the part 8 of this video series. Thank you.